Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Reality Check Podcast. I am joined tonight by No Sugar for 30 Days Marcus. No Baby Ruth for you, boy. And by Raul Mas from Miami. And as the topic title for tonight, America's geopolitical 3D chess game. And it's kind of 3D and three pronged, and we'll get into the different aspects of it because it really has gotten it's a battle of wits. Apart from it's not just military might, it's a battle of wits. It's a battle of strategy. I wanted to begin with the situation in Hormuz. Uh, the naysayers are saying, well, Iran is still in control. The straits are closed, and lately we've seen they've cleared out a mine-free lane. They're escorting ships. It's a trickle, and then, of course, there's the issue of the worldwide market. Even though we have a lot of petroleum here, we don't have the refineries here in America, and we also depend on different grades of crude, and not having all of those is another factor for the gas prices. I believe that Iran is waiting out America. They're trying to hang on by the cuticles, basically, and what they're saying is, we think your electorate will turn on you before we fall apart here and there's mass rioting, et cetera, et cetera. Uh, so to continue on this topic of the straits, I was also very happy to see that those little boats, Jesse Waters the other day on Fox said they're reduced to having Boston whalers running around with machine guns. They just blew six. I've heard six. I've heard seven out of the water, and there's only a trickle, a very scant amount of drones and missiles that they're able to fire. Those have been intercepted. So thank God for that. When they turned on a South Korean vessel, I believe. Uh, Marcus, would you like to continue the topic?
Yeah, with Iran, they can't go toe to toe with the U.S. So what they have to do is go asymmetrical, and their role in this conflict is to be a disruptor, which is to disrupt uh, the availability of oil. And one of the things that they did recently is fire missiles or drones at the UAE just to create more disruption. And like I said, it's like what was mentioned before with the war powers resolution. That's not a firm thing, but what the crux of it is that Congress controls the purse, and eventually uh, Trump is going to ask Congress for money to continue with this ongoing conflict with Iran. So then it becomes like a big bartering game at this point with Democrats and Republicans. A lot of horse trading. So we'll take it from there.
Pete Hegseth was just recently asking, and they were grilling him on that. They said, "You're asking for money, so you answer our question." Raul, would you like to chime in?
Yeah, listen, I think I think the Iranian regime is literally in its death throes. Um, as the administration has rightly pointed out, even including at this morning's news conference that Hegseth and Chairman Kane were present. That look, I mean, they're the bulk of their military assets have been completely decimated. Their air force, their navy, their a huge chunk of their ballistic missile capability, other air defenses. The U.S. can fly over any part of Iran that it wants these days, pretty much unimpeded if it wants to. And the only thing that was keeping them, I think, from transiting the Gulf was, I think, the fear of some areas that might still be mined, or that they're unaware of whether they're mined or not. I mean, there's some ambiguity there. And the second thing was these sort of small boats that are controlled by the IRGC. That some of them are in fact relatively small, like Boston whaler types of boats. Okay, but others are a little bit more, bigger, more sophisticated, with some missile capabilities. But most of the ones that are remaining are of the first variety. And I think what you saw this morning was two U.S. Navy destroyers, USS Mason and USS Truxtun. I think Mason was built back in, I think, 2007. Truxtun was built, I think, at the turn of the century. So, uh, relatively new destroyers. And they basically ran the gauntlet, accompanying two U.S. flagged vessels.
Right.
They were supposedly under, constant sort of, harassing fire, if you will. They were escorted by Navy SH-60 helicopters as well as Apache helicopters.
And warthogs.
And that's where, they blew up, like you said, 6 or 7 of these boats that came out. I think they tried launching some missiles. They may have been, destroyed before they got out of the launchers, or defeated by the defenses on the destroyers. I don't really know. What I can tell you, because I do have, and Marcus is aware of this, a pretty intimate knowledge of destroyers in particular, because I commissioned one of them down here in South Florida back in 2007, DDG 101, USS Gridley. And I went to Bath, Maine, visited the shipyard, been actually on a number of destroyers at sea. And those are, extremely capable ships. Most people have no idea how sophisticated the weaponry on board those ships are capable of. And the most impressive part of it is the Aegis radar and fire control systems. That really, it's a 360. It's 360 degrees at all times. You can see over the horizon. And also has a capability. They have sonar capabilities to see what's going on underneath the water. But they can basically identify, threats coming from multiple locations over the horizon, and they have the capability of tracking each and every one of them, constantly updating the firing solutions and which defenses to employ against them. So extremely, just very, very sophisticated warships. The Greyhounds of the Sea, they're very fast. They have 4 jet turbine engines powering each one of those destroyers. They can move very, very quickly, which means they can evade very, very quickly. And they have, when it comes to air defenses, they have a number of options available to them, including sort of, missiles to intercept other missiles. They also have a system called the nuclear, I think it is. It's a decoy system that they send up, and what it basically does is it deploys, it hovers over the ship, and it deploys some antennas, and it sends out radio frequencies to mimic a warship. So what they try and do is they try and get the anti-ship missile that's coming towards a destroyer to focus on that hovering piece of ordnance in the sky, rather than on the ship itself, because it's telling the seeker on the anti-ship missile that it's the actual warship. And then on top of that, and if that were to fail, then they have the so-called CWIN, the close-in weapon system, which is a 30-millimeter Gatling gun that fires several thousand rounds a minute.
Yeah.
It's kind of the last line of defense. So, it would be very hard to penetrate all of those defenses of a destroyer, and even more so when you have, the kind of air cover that they had as they were transiting through the straits. I mean, I'm sure they had, in addition to those helicopters, they probably had, fixed wing assets, F-15s, F-35s in the air as well.
A-10s too.
Sensors and satellites monitoring, anything going on the coastline, tunnels opening up to bring out a launcher or something. So, I think today was kind of a test run. I think, they pulled it off. I think they learned from it, and hopefully, they'll now start escorting more ships, out of the Persian Gulf. And one of the ships that was fired upon was a South Korean cargo ship. And
Yes.
so that's why the president's saying, "Hey, South Korea, you should get involved. Come on, you got to defend your own people." And I think that there is, the fact that Trump last week said he was pulling 5,000 troops out of Germany was a clear signal to the Europeans that, okay, you're not going to help us. Guess what? We're not going to help you. We're going to pull out, 5,000 troops, a not insignificant number. Okay. And that was, I think, very clear message to Germany in particular that, we're not going to put up with this shit. I mean, you're not going to help us. We're not going to help you. It's as simple as that, and it's kind of what it's coming down to be. And, the other thing that strikes me, these strikes against the United Arab Emirates, man, that's,
big mistake.
They're picking the wrong people to fight with, man. I mean, the UAE and Dubai and Qatar and these countries have basically, I don't want to say they've been allied with Iran, but they've tried to sort of maintain, some relations with them and kind of keep them, at bay type of stuff. And now what they've done is they've completely, alienated, the UAE and Qatar and Saudi Arabia. And interesting note, that apparently I saw a video today, Israel has actually, for the very first time in its history, sent Israeli soldiers and Israeli equipment, including components of the Iron Dome, anti-missile defense system, to the United Arab Emirates. I mean, talk about the Abraham Accords, having real teeth now. I mean, imagine Israelis now going to, accompanying Israeli weapon systems that are going to the UAE to protect the United Arab Emirates from missiles coming to Iran. This is going to totally rewrite the map in the Middle East, man. I mean, and for the good. I mean, I think
yes,
at the end of the day, when the smoke clears, and the smoke will clear eventually, it's taken a little bit longer than expected, but I think that they are on the verge of collapse. We can talk about specifically why, but I think when all the smoke clears, it's going to be a new Middle East. It's going to be a Middle East in which Iran is basically essentially defanged, and hopefully with a new government in place that wants to play by the rules and wants to advance the interests of their people and their country, and not keep funding Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in Gaza and all these other terrorist activities.
Well, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, as they say, and that's to me the Israel UAE relationship. It's interesting that as far as some of those mines turned out, as I recall recently, turned out to be decoys. It was a bluff.
It could be.
Be careful, Gray Satan. If you sail through the straits, it is rife with mines.
Yeah.
And with respect to Germany, I look at it this way, and I say Germany, but the same could be said for France. The same could be said for the UK. They need to figure out, who do we fear most? The Muslim infestation that's taken over our country, or losing Americans covering our ass and protecting us? That's what they have to confront. I want to touch on part of why Starmer, to me, the worst offender right now is Starmer, as far as non-compliance. There is a Lloyd's of London cabal monopoly where the insurers that are very, very wealthy play on both sides of this issue and have done it for decades. So they want the uncertainty. If you're an insurer for chaos, in the event of chaos, you want chaos. It's like the guy that has a tire changing business and he scatters thumbtacks on each side of the road leading to his tire shop. And to me, that is what they want. That they benefit from that. They're in no hurry for there to be a stable strait, because they want to blackmail those tankers. You want to sail through the straits? Pay us. You want to get through X number of billions of dollars of oil? Pay us. 10%, I believe it is. Yeah. When you consider the cargo, the value in those tankers, and the number of tankers That's one hell of a lot of money.
Sure.
What's going? Yeah, Scott Bessent, who is masterful in my opinion, has been quietly behind the scenes taking on that monopoly and crushing it, and they are
Yeah. Well,
freaking
well,
out.
actually, I'll tell you one thing, Carl. When that first happened, and Lloyd's of London was saying they weren't gonna, I actually very publicly came out and said, you know what, fuck them. Create,
Yeah.
create an alternative system, okay,
Yep.
and basically put, the full faith and credit of the United States government into reinsuring the companies that insure these cargo ships, and basically say if Lloyd's of London won't reinsure you, Uncle Sam will. Okay, and that I think got their attention, quite frankly. I mean, because Scott Bessent did come out and say that. Okay, that the United States stands ready to reinsure these ships. But look, the people that have the most to lose in all of this really is the Asian countries. South Korea, Japan in particular.
Even China.
And China, absolutely, China as well. They're the ones that basically buy the bulk of the oil coming out of that out of the Persian Gulf. The Chinese have been doing it, with their shadow fleet, because it's the Iran is under the threat of sanctions, et cetera, et cetera. So they've been, kind of doing it, quasi legally or illegally. But the South Koreans have also been buying oil, and from the Persian Gulf. I don't know if necessarily from Iran, but the Japanese as well. So those countries are the ones that are really hurting right now because they got big developed economies. They need to keep their economies humming, and Iran is running out of options because and this has been commented on news media on several occasions. You cannot, and Marcus, didn't you work on an oil well at some point?
Yeah, I worked for Ensign Drilling as a roughneck.
You can't, these oil wells that are in production, you can't just like cap them off from one day to the other. And then when you go and try and restart the wells, it's really problematic because oftentimes you find that the oil that's coming up is not at the same pressure. Okay, you don't have the same productivity that you had before. I mean, I don't understand the whole geology behind it. Okay, but I am told from people that know these things, and also from watching a lot of Lawman. Sorry, what's it called? Landman, the Landman TV series, right? That
Right.
you can't just turn on and turn off oil wells. It's not like a faucet that you can just turn them off.
Not a fire hydrant.
No. And so what the Iranians have been doing is they've been apparently, stuffing oil into every empty container that they can find in the country. Okay.
And they're running out of that.
And they're running out of that. I mean, they have these old, like decrepit, tanker trucks and stuff like that they're filling up with oil, anything but, starting to shut down their wells because they realize that it would then take an enormous amount of time to get them up and running again. And then when they are up and running again, they may not be at the same levels of productivity that they had before, right? So it's a problem. It's a big problem. They're running out of money, and when you have these, as fanatical as you might be as an IRG,
they gotta get paid.
You're not getting paid if you don't have money to buy food. If your family's going hungry, okay. I think even the most hardened IRGC person starts to think twice about, is this really how I want to, go down type of stuff,
Before we go to Marcus, I just wanted to briefly touch on quick dental analogy, medical science analogy. When you talked about Lloyd's of London, screw you, we'll do it ourselves. That used to be a problem with the medical, dental, and other high liability bound professions, medicine far more than us, especially anesthesiologists. But the companies kind of had a monopoly. They all priced similarly. The premiums pay or be very vulnerable, right? You can get wiped out by one bad suit. So what did we do? We founded a company called TDIC. Anyone that practices a healthcare profession knows what that is. The Doctors Insurance Company. It's internal. It's run by us, and they have great rates. When I closed my license out and everything, I even got a little check. it was pitiful for what I paid every year. But I got back $6,700, I think, because they'd never paid an award for me. So it even had a little legacy benefit built in. So
Yeah.
we basically, it's nonprofit. We only use the cost for staff. And again, it's an analogy, but that's how you
Yeah,
fix it.
it's like self-insurance, man. You know, you're
It is
basically
self-insurance,
insuring
yeah,
your own population, right? And you were
exactly.
doing it because you guys aren't really, you're not in the business of insurance, you're in the business of dentistry. So you don't have to run it like a for-profit organization, right? You run it
No,
as a not-for-profit.
and we hired people. We
Yeah,
hired people that are
right.
expert in the
But that
market.
model is actually found in a lot of different industries. You know,
Yeah,
that just basically say, you know what, we know our business better than insurers. We know what the risks are, and
yes.
we're going to put together our own, you know, do our own sort of self-insurance. Yeah, there's some operational costs associated with it, but it beats having to, you know, have another master looking over you, and you know, trying to make a profit off of your business. You know.
And having to do things that you didn't want to do for productivity to pay those bills. Marcus, would you like to continue the topic of how about commenting maybe on the inner struggles within the IRGC, because there's some shit happening in there. We don't know who's in charge. That's why Trump walked from Islamabad.
Yeah.
Well, I just look at it as an act of desperation on its final legs. My take is that they're still trying to ride it out because we have midterms coming up, and the price of gas went from February 2026 from 224 a gallon to 451 a gallon in April 2026, like not even 2 months later. So there's grumblings from people about oil shock, the price of oil, and as well as businesses. And there is some blame that the final nail of the coffin for Spirit Airlines was attributed to the price spike. But I don't think that's the real issue to that. But I think they're just kind of waiting for the midterms, which is too far away, and that just for the Iranians, RGC, that's a long shot.
6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, and let's say that the people's minds are made up, the die is cast before 6 months, even 5 months. I don't see them, but we do need to get the price down. Would you like to expound a little bit on the Spirit Air, that fallacy that, of course, it's Trump's fault. He made the oil more expensive, as if Spirit Air was a functioning, surviving airline, which is why they were going to be bought up by JetBlue, right? They were so damn stable.
On Spirit Airlines, they went through bankruptcy twice, and JetBlue wanted to do a merger at the cost of $3.8 billion. The ones who were opposing that was Senator Warren and Pete Buttigieg.
Yeah.
And what Senator Warren did was wrote letters to anybody who would listen to stop the sale of JetBlue and Spirit. And she would argue that it's a Reagan-appointed judge that prevented the merger. And after it was blocked, people on the left, including Warren and Pete Buttigieg, celebrated this. The Reagan-appointed judge is William Young, and he said, and it's a fallacy about limiting competition by creating more of a monopoly by increased mergers. But my take is it's a distressed airline. There is not a merger for a bigger owner for a bigger ownership. I mean that's the case, but the thing is it was under distress, and what came out of it, Spirit shut down. There's 30 regional airports that were affected, 17,000 jobs,
Pilots,
pilots, attendees.
crews, yeah.
But the thing is, like the free market, nothing of value goes to waste. Even though they said it's 17,000 jobs, and 30 airports affected. There is where the market would absorb those values, but it takes time because the smaller airlines or the bigger airlines, they would buy these airplanes at a discount, whatever, 10 cents on the dollar. They would buy the routes and the hubs, and the thing is, for them to buy it, they would have to acquire some of these people that used to work for Spirit Airlines, but that takes time. One common misconception is the price of oil was the nail in the coffin, but with these airlines, what they like to do is use the futures market to purchase uh, uh, gas in advance, sometimes in anticipation uh, 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 for any foreseeable spike. And all these airlines, they knew that a conflict with Iran was coming, so I'm sure they hedged their costs uh, well in advance for this.
Kind of like forever stamps. As far as the two people that were behind derailing it, I mean, my God, everyone knows what incredible tacticians and effective policymakers Fakahontas and Booty Grab were, right?
Right. Hey guys, listen. As I'm listening to you guys talk about Spirit, I just checked the news feed here real quick, and apparently, right as we started the program, President Trump came out on Truth Social saying that he has agreed to pause, quote, Project Freedom, which was the administration's efforts to move commercial ships through the Strait of Hormuz. In a post on Truth Social, he said the pause will be for a short period and comes following the request of Pakistan and other countries. He said, quote, great progress has been made toward a complete and final agreement with representatives of Iran. So, apparently things have changed there. And also, by the way, one of those two ships that made it through the Strait of Hormuz on Monday was from a Florida-based shipping operator from Crowley here in state of Florida, big maritime company here. So apparently one of their ships was the ones that made it through the Strait of Hormuz. But obviously, I guess good news. I don't know.
Yeah,
I think maybe what we're seeing here is that the Iranians were waiting to see whether Trump would in fact do exactly what he did today. And
blast
when they
away.
did, saying we're not going to take any, basically saying, fuck you, we're not going to take any more of this shit from you. Here come
Yep.
two destroyers, give it your best shot type of stuff. And they basically lost that. Now all of a sudden, like we said, right when the program was starting, Trump comes on and says, hey, guess what? I'm pausing Project Freedom because I think we got a deal. So
Now that's great news. And I think a lot of that would depend, highly dependent on why did they make the deal? Apart from the fact that they got their ass whooped today, is this just another rope a dope? Because these fuckers
yeah,
are
who
evil.
knows, man? Who knows?
They
Well,
are good at rope a
I'm
dope.
just relaying to you that, here we are talking about, what we think is going on.
Yeah.
And we just got through talking about, Straits of Hormuz and what transpired this morning. And literally, here we are, half an hour into the program, find out, it's uh, apparently something's in the works. So let's keep our fingers crossed. Let's hope that these guys do in fact sign something. Look, I think Trump is he's trying really really hard, okay, to kind of let the world know that I am giving these people every possible chance
Yes.
that I can, right?
And
Um,
then some.
and then some, right? And he's showing an awful lot of patience, right? Um, and I think it's the right thing to do. And by the way,
Yeah.
one thing we forgot to mention, Marco Rubio is on his way to Italy to meet with the Pope. Okay. And as I think I've indicated to you guys before, Marco Rubio is in fact a very faithful Catholic. I see him at church, St. Augustine Church here in Coral Gables quite often. When he first, was announced as a Secretary of State, he showed up there with his family, and I saw him, on his knees, praying. I imagine for, the good Lord to give him some wisdom and, help him understand that he was undertaking a very, very important job.
Yes.
And he's on his way to talk to the Pope, and I think it's a good thing to kind of like, number one, explain to the guy why we're doing what we're doing. Explain to the Holy Father why the U.S. is doing what they're doing. To emphasize the fact that Iran is the menace, not the U.S. 45,000 innocent civilians killed. So let's like I said, keep our fingers crossed. Let's hope for success for Trump, for Marco Rubio, and for our sailors and soldiers that are out there in harm's way.
For your lips to God's ears, Marcus. I know you wanted to touch on this. Please
Yeah,
feel
I'm
free.
always kind of leery about agreements because, like the government and the public would push one narrative, and the reality is completely different. Like the Doha Agreement about working with the Taliban for the U.S. for the gradual withdrawal. Part of the agreement was forcing the Afghan government, to release like either 5,000 or 10,000 prisoners, and they became like frontline troops for the Taliban surge that took over Afghanistan eventually. Look at like the Paris Peace Accords, where and the thing is about the Doha Agreement, they didn't work. It wasn't a three-party agreement. I know I'm drifting off topic. It was the U.S. and the Taliban outside of the Afghan government. Same thing with the Paris Peace Accords. It was U.S. North Vietnam outside of South Vietnam, and after the accords was reached, the South Vietnamese prisoner was like, you sold us out, and it was pretty much set up in a way where the South Vietnamese government was going to fall anyhow. So I'm always kind of leery about the agreements. What I mean, for us, we're in a position of strength. Why give them any inch to for them to reconstitute in something bad or worse later on in time?
Yeah. Well, also, is Trump more afraid of the electoral results and seeing himself get impeached on day one by Speaker Jeffries, or is this that I look at it this way? We all know the saying, a man's word is his bond, right? A terrorist word ain't worth shit, in my opinion. That
Well,
Nakia, lying to the infidel, apart from other things that they do, they cannot be trusted. I'm thinking of the Reagan doctrine: trust but verify. We, of course, don't know the details of all this, and maybe it's Trump playing his own rope a dope. But that it's curious, definitely. Um,
well, I always said like the electoral map is only like maybe like a 2 dozen vote swing in terms of swing seats, but because of the recent ruling, uh, everything's changed. So
yes.
the chances of Democrats trying to take over the House is becoming less likely now,
Yeah.
because it's not just adding five; you're actually doing a 10-point swing because you're doubling the numbers. So any subtraction from them is doubling the swing to the Republican side.
Zero sum game. It isn't. It isn't fungible, as they say. The term fungible, and it can be recreated or make more of. No, it ain't fungible here. There's only so many votes. They're also losing districts because they're losing population, the blue states. We know New York has lost two. I believe New York will lose three. And we don't want to stray too far into electoral politics, but that topic will become more and more viable and relevant as we approach the midterms. How about the assassination? We haven't mentioned a thing. I will not dignify that piece of shit's name, that individual, by giving his name. I'm just going to call him the DC shooter. But I'm worried about our Secret Service. I know that it's difficult to retool something that quickly, It's like stopping an ocean liner on a dime. I understand that. But if you look how far back these failures occurred, I think Trump, when he entered in January of 26, 25, excuse me, should have come already loaded for bear. And this is the president famous for you're fired. Why is Sean Curran still employed? I think he's failed, or he's powerless to do anything, which is even scarier. I'd almost rather think that he's just been too soft pedaled or too incompetent to get it done or too hesitant versus that he hasn't, that he does want to take more decisive action. He does want to reform, but just doesn't have. I know they're hiring a lot, but they're short staffed. I'd like to hear from you gentlemen on that.
Go ahead, Raul.
I had muted my mic because the dog was here barking. I don't know if you heard him there briefly, but
You heard no barking. You did it good.
yeah. So anyway, um, I share your concerns, Carlos. I don't understand. I mean, the president's now had at least three attacks on people trying to kill him, and it just sort of seems that. Especially hearing the commentary from a lot of those journalists that were there, who have probably been to the White House a lot of times and been to a lot of these functions, and you heard so many of them saying that they were just kind of in shock about how easy it was for them to get into the dining room, right? I mean, how the Secret Service agents barely even looked at the tickets, right?
Paper tickets, no ID.
Yeah, no idea, and then you see that film footage of the Secret Service beginning to take down the screening, the
Mac.
magnetometers, whatever the screen for weapons, and you see up there in the corner, Secret Service agent with a canine, a Belgian Malinois, which I'm very familiar with because I had one, and the Malinois, I mean, those dogs are really, really smart, man, and they've got a sixth sense like you wouldn't believe,
Has Bin Laden.
And you see that dog poke his nose into that room, not once, but twice, okay? And both times the handler kind of pushed him away, okay? And after he pushed him away, literally at that instant, you see the guy bolt out of the room with a shotgun, running as fast as he could and then shooting a shotgun blast at one of the agents that got hit with some buckshot in the body armor. But I just think that I don't know, man. I'm concerned. I don't know what the solution is. I mean, it would be very outrageous if the president, suddenly fired the Secret Service and hired, Pinkerton guards or, private security or Eric Prince or something, right? But, if this thing continues,
How far was the dog when he bolted?
Huh?
How far was the dog and the handler when
Not that far. In fact, you can still see them. The dog pokes his head into the room. The handler kind of like pulls him aside. Then his back is to the camera because the camera's coming from a different angle. But he's not completely out of the image then. And you see the guy bolt out, and then you see, I don't know what the guy did with the dog. He told him to sit or something, but I don't know where maybe he handed the leash to somebody else. But then that guard comes running back to try and engage the shooter. And it's very visible because what they've done with that footage now is they've enhanced it. They've cleaned it up, and they've actually focused. There's some segments you can actually focus on that particular area where the guy bolted out of, and you see in the imagery the guy actually walking into the room, okay, or that hallway, whatever the hell it was. Then you see the Secret Service guy coming sort of, a few seconds afterwards, and the dog, kind of like seems to think there's something of interest there. He kind of dissuades him. The dog insists, goes back a second time. The guy pulls him back. they walk away, and boom, all of a sudden the guy comes running out. Dude, man, I
mean,
mean,
the dog could have.
that handler, I'd be waterboarding that handler and saying, "What the hell are you doing, man?" I
Well,
mean, the dog
Why
always
wouldn't they
picked
release?
up on something, right? I mean,
Why not release the dog? Why? I
Yeah,
mean, the dog is not just a detector. They'll take you down. Why wouldn't you let the dog go
look,
and
man,
chase them?
those dogs, like most canines, but Belgian Malinois in particular, they can pick up all sorts of scents, right? I mean, they can pick up a scent of that your body's excreting because you're nervous, or they can pick up
cortisol.
scents of gunpowder, all sorts of stuff, right? And they really have like this incredible sixth sense, right? They can tell when somebody's up to no good. That's why police love them, right? Because they're like, these guys, they're basically bred to be guard dogs, and they have been for forever and ever. So they have this natural instinct that, or supernatural instinct that something is wrong. And for the handler to just kind of dismiss that and pull them away from the room, and seconds later having somebody bolt out, man, I'd be like, I'd be all over that guy saying,
The
"What
dog
the
could
fuck
have
were
been
you?"
released and caught him. The guy was fast, but
Yeah,
the dog.
but the point is, getting to Carlos's question, I mean, what's going on with the Secret Service? I mean,
I mean,
you definitely need a better dog handler, right? I mean, the dog, didn't do anything wrong. He was obeying his handler, but he
well,
obviously picked up on something. In
and on
my
top of
mind,
that, he ran through like 5 or 6 people. I mean,
yeah, man.
nobody tripped him, nobody tackled him. I mean, nobody did a rugby or football tackle.
But Marcus, take a look at seriously, guys. I encourage you to
Let me
take
see
a
if
look
I
at
can
that
show it
video.
here.
Yeah,
Let me see. This is crude. I apologize, but
yeah.
watch.
Yeah, you can see the guy up here. There's the dog. You can't see the dog. He's right there. The dog's being pulled away. See?
I watch.
And all of a sudden, look, there he goes again. He goes to snoop again. The guy pulls him back again. He moves out of the screen now, and here comes the guy, right? And as he goes through that, what you don't see there, what you see it in the wider shot, there was a guy in the lower left-hand corner, a Secret Service agent. That guy was switched on, bro. I mean, that guy, when he saw that guy coming towards him, all right, you see it in slow motion. He drew his weapon and he fired, I think, at least 3 or 4 shots. I don't think he connected. The guy was moving so quickly, but you can actually see the muzzle flash. The guy very quickly pulled out his pistol, fired a shot. The guy blew past him. He fired like another shot, and then apparently a third shot as he was moving away from him. Like 1, 2, 3 shots in a row. I think he missed them all 3 times. But my point is that whoever that guy was in the lower left-hand corner of that image, that he was, his back was kind of to the camera. You can see, he had I think it was a uniformed agent. He had a pistol on a lower sort of holster there, not on under coat or something. He had on a vest, but he drew that weapon very quickly, engaged the guy lightning fast. But the guy was moving so quickly that he reacted as fast as he could, but he just didn't connect. That's all.
Question for you, Raul. The guy that you were describing just now, is it the same guy who was facing the camera, who backed away so his toes wouldn't get stepped on?
No.
That guy to me really fucked up.
No. This guy's back is to the camera.
Other way.
He has on a vest. He has a weapon like mid thigh on his right thigh, and he's actually looking towards where the guy was coming from. And he sees the guy come out and start running towards him, and he immediately drew. But I mean, you can draw pretty quickly, and you can fire within a couple seconds or less. Okay, if you're really, really good, which this guy I think did. Okay, but he's shooting at a target that is kind of like coming straight at him and at a slight angle, and then the guy just blew past him. And he didn't connect with that first shot or the second shot. And by the second shot, the guy was already almost past him, and the third shot he was out of the view of the camera. So, but just remarkable, man. It really is worth watching.
How far did he get? Like how
He
far did
tripped.
he ran before he got subdued?
He didn't get far. He
Yeah.
tripped.
You can't really tell because the camera was the camera didn't move right to follow him, but I get a sense that he was stopped. I think what happened was I think he tripped. Quite frankly,
He
I think
fell
is
on
what
his
I
own.
heard.
He
Huh?
fell on his face, is what he did.
Yeah, he
My
fell on his
concern,
face. He tripped. He
yeah,
tripped.
yeah.
Right after he wasn't shot. He tripped, and then
No, he
apparently
wasn't shot.
one of the Secret Service guys, basically, the guy who got shot with buckshot was the guy that actually I think drew his weapon. I think he got a couple of pellets of buckshot. The guy shot him as he was lunging towards him and trying to get past him. So he got shot, but in the vest, luckily. But he tried to engage him, but it just was moving too fast.
Yeah, getting
So,
back to the guy who didn't want his toe stepped on, he fired 5 shots and didn't hit jack shit,
well,
and
listen, man,
didn't even
I
trip.
don't, these guys are all, trained above average. Okay. They're not, they're not your ordinary sort of, um, garden variety, small town cops. Right. I mean, but, you know, those are stressful situations, man, where you have to make, split second decisions, um, and you're not shooting at a paper target here, man. You're shooting at somebody who, and remember what you saw also in the videos. This guy had cased he'd basically done, had surveyed the building the night before. He knew exactly where he was going to launch his attack from. He probably had eyes on what these guys were, when these guys were setting up the things, how long they would take to bring them down. He waited for that moment when they were distracted because they were taking down the machines, and that's when he made his move. I mean, this guy was no dummy, man. I mean, he's a master of science, master's degree in computer science, brainiac, went to Caltech. I mean, come on, that's like MIT of the West,
Yeah,
So
Caltech. Caltech and he's living with mom and dad. This guy is so smart that he didn't even think to get an expanded magazine rifle. Thank God. If you're going to do a mass shooting, you don't come with a shotgun. You come with an AR-15. Thank God it didn't matter.
We can debate that, but I mean, the guy, he was he had a 1911 pistol. He had a pump action shotgun. I mean, he may not have been a gun expert or something, but he
By
was
no means.
he was well armed and obviously very, very focused on getting something done, right? So
He was ready to die. He did not expect. That's
yeah.
another thing with all those agents. That guy shouldn't be alive for some fucking judge to be apologizing to him a couple of days because of a vegan meal or because he was in suicide watch. Jesus Christ. That is sickening. Yeah, that guy should have been sorry, but that guy should have been executed.
Well,
You
listen,
come
man,
in,
I think it's a legitimate question to be asked. I think, is the Secret Service doing all they can?
No.
I think that there's just we're living in very, very different times, man, and we don't want to live in a militarized state. Okay, I don't think the president wants to have not be able to talk to the people, and do his politicking. But man, it's the Secret Service is going to have to step up their game because the threats are coming fast and furious, and they should just be literally on pins and needles at every single event, expecting that there will be a shooter at every single event going forward.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
room was that? What room was that? That the assailant was? Was it like a closet or a hallway or
It's a conference room
Huh?
or a work closet.
a closet? So that's like a big security lapse because if you're going to maintain security, you're going to do sweeps. You're going to check,
Yeah.
make sure everything's secure, like maybe even tape it saying, "Hey, this is 100% secured, and you don't have to worry."
Yeah.
But the fact that it's right next to the magnetometers is a big oversight.
Yeah.
And I mean that's like glaringly bad. Number two is I took a shooting course. It's called Shaw's, and, and for pistol rifle transitions. But one of the things they tell us is that like the FBI did a study on shootouts within like X amount of feet, like within, and they determined that most shootouts happen within less than 6 to 10 feet, like most of them.
Right.
And out of in those engagements, like X amount of rounds were fired. They determined that like 3/4 or 80% of shots are missed
Yeah.
because the stress. It's not a paper target. You're being shot at.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and with the shooting course, what's hard upon, like in the military side, you're doing quick reaction drills. You're doing Mozambiques. You're doing a lot to mitigate those stressful situations where it becomes second nature.
I give the guy who Raul mentioned with his back turned, I give that guy an A plus. He was wounded and he returned fire. The guy that wanted to make sure he didn't get stepped on his shiny new shoes, that guy I give him an F minus. Uh,
Well,
but I mean,
another thing,
Where's Kyle Rittenhouse when you need him?
another thing to point out is that the shooter did a manifesto, and part of it was the rhetoric. He was inspired by one of the California lawmakers, and this kind of harkens back to I think our first or second episode about language, freedom of speech and harmful rhetoric, and the type of rhetoric is we have to be careful how impressionable people are, because over time they either become poisoned by it and act upon it, or they act upon it now.
Yeah.
And I just have to bring that point up again.
Yeah.
Let's talk about venue, because that's, to me, the biggest overall failure was the preventive. The preventive is, in today's day and age, and a president who's had attempts on his life, that hotel is obsolete. We
Yeah.
cannot have.
It
I
is.
can book a room, I can stay there, I can case the joint, I can go even work out in the gym a little while, do a little upper body, whatever, maybe do legs, and then tomorrow carry out the hit.
Yeah.
That's insane. He was walking all around. There's footage of him in the gym, which was empty.
Yeah, that hotel's been there forever. I mean,
I know.
literally, it's a very old hotel, but it has a lot of exhibition space and meeting spaces. And apparently the White House Correspondents Dinner has been taking place there like every year for like, decades or something. So, they're in that routine, right? And, those kinds of things are very dangerous for a president to be at, because if you're going to an event that is held at the same place year in and year out, around the same time, lots of advance notice, everybody knows it's taking place. Well, guess what? Somebody like this bright fellow from Caltech knew in advance that the president was going to be there. The White House had announced it publicly that he was finally coming to a White House Correspondents Dinner, right?
Right.
And the guy just looks it up and finds out, well, gee, it's at this hotel. Calls up and finds out that they have rooms available. Okay. And then basically, instead of getting on an airplane, gets on Amtrak, where, they don't really check your luggage. So, carries his weapons on board the train and goes to Chicago and switches trains in Chicago to another train to take him to DC. Gets off, with his weapons, shotgun probably disassembled, so he could pack it compactly, and checks into the hotel. No questions asked, right? I mean, that's America, man. I mean, it's the land of the free and the home of the brave, man. I mean, we can, hell, man. I mean, I've gone places, lots of times with the shooting competitions and stuff with guns galore, walking into Motel 6s and Holiday Inns, and we don't make a big deal about them, but I mean, it's pretty obvious that we're bringing guns in because we don't want to leave them overnight, in the car, out in the in the parking garage. But we try and do it, discreetly.
I just have to make a point. Like like when you're hosting an event, you have to do like a threat assessment,
Mhm.
and you pointed out some very tangible points, like it's a hotel. Hotel guests, you could be there like 30 days in advance, check in, and be a long-term resident, and come in and out freely with weapons. Well, imagine if you're like a state-sponsored hit squad,
Sure,
like
sure,
Venezuela, Iran, or Russia, or China, whatever group. But the thing is, they could just check into the hotel for like a month or 2 weeks prior to the event, and just case a joint, do like a soft walkthrough over and over again, just to get all the exits, the weak choke points, the weak areas. Maybe set up like IEDs later on. But the thing is, that's a fault of Secret Service, where it was like an improper threat assessment. Because if they were going to do like an advon prior to the event, they would do at least 2 weeks out, look at all the guests, search their rooms with them present, just to make sure they're cleared as well.
yeah, yeah,
And that wasn't done.
right,
And the manifest, the guest list, the list of
Yeah,
hotel guests. Check their social media. Check
yeah,
their social media. I mean, with AI, that's not that hard to do. That guy was a jihadist.
yeah.
They wouldn't
So
have
I
believed.
mean, yeah, they did like a social media check. He would have been flagged.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But they'll come to your house if you bought at Big Sporting Goods. They sure as fuck were going to come for that, right? Or if you went to Bass Pro Shop to pick up a Abu Garcia rod, they'll come visit you there after January 6th.
I mean,
I don't
they'll
want
look
to
at
believe
they'll
it
look at
either.
they'll look at I mean, they'll do like if his guns were registered. But if, for like any possible background checks. But they'll look at his credit card or card transactions. But
He bought the guns
yeah, but,
legally. And by the
yeah,
way,
yeah, but
earlier,
the guy, all his stuff was legal. He had no criminal record. He had
yeah,
no,
no, but they would have known that, oh, he has
sure,
weapons.
sure.
your
But my,
social
my
media.
point is, look, to your point though, Marcus, the president has been lucky from the standpoint that these have
Very.
been sort of, lone wolves, supposedly, right? We know very little about the Butler shooter. Okay, for some reason, there hasn't been a whole bunch of information coming out about that young man. And the speculation's always been that he was radicalized, perhaps by some, Muslim groups from Europe or something, right? That encouraged him to do his attack type of stuff, right? But I just, again, getting back to the whole point of this argument, I think that you and I and Carlos and the three of us, man, we're all kind of skeptical of the Secret Service, and I think there's also a lot of Americans now. The first time was a shock, okay. The second time was, okay, but that guy was such a bumbler that they caught him before he, was able to do anything. I mean, before he really menaced the president, right? I mean, although he was on the golf course, he was walking in that direction, so it wasn't, that, quickly. It wasn't intercepted that quickly. But
It was
this
a
third time
14 hour.
around, people are just like, wait a second, man, something's wrong here. Okay. Um, and if this is the new normal, then hell, man, we got to have like, friggin', a quick reaction force, in the room next door, ready to,
Well, they already have a cat team. That's the
yeah,
Secret Service rapid response. But my take is, like, if there's a just say if there's a fourth attempt, imagine if it was a person who was military trained. I mean,
well,
we're dealing with like semi amateurs with no training. Imagine somebody who have like maybe a law enforcement or a military background,
yeah, 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 yeah.
and that's
That's a whole
that
different ball of wax, man.
yeah, that I mean, like the FBI shootout with the bank robbers in South Miami. One was a airborne, another one was a ranger. 2 against 6. and those two did a number of those FBI agents. They had to revise the whole training. I mean, their FBI was carrying like revolvers.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to touch on the Mar-a-Lago piece of shit shooter, that guy whose name I also will not mention. Let's clarify a few things that make that case even worse. He was camped out in that thicket with food, with water
Yeah,
for like 14
that wasn't at Mar-a-Lago. That was at Trump's golf course, which is
Okay, sorry,
yeah,
the golf course. He
it's
was
10 minutes.
camped
It's
out
10
for
minutes
hours,
away from. It's a Trump resort up there in West Palm Beach. I've been
right?
there a couple of times.
And it's the sixth hole where they know that the people get the photo op, where you can
Yeah,
see
yeah, yeah.
Trump. And here's
So
another thing. Here's another thing. He was detected because his muzzle, the guy was stupid enough that it was pointing out of the thicket, out of the hedge, and an agent saw it. That Secret Service agent took multiple shots at that guy, did not hit him. The guy escaped and outran the Secret Service. And the only reason he was caught is because his pickup truck, as he sped by, a concerned citizen, a good Samaritan, looked and saw the license plate. Okay, that's why he was caught. So another clusterfuck and
well,
another
look, man, I
example of
mean,
failure.
look, again, it's very hard. I mean, we watch a lot of television, but I can tell you, shooting somebody at a distance with a pistol who's moving it's not easy, right? I mean, when you see these shots on television of the detective, shooting somebody off a rooftop with a pistol,
No, that's a BS.
that's Hollywood, right? I mean, a lot of that's Hollywood, right? And the Secret Service agents, they're not Superman, right? I mean, and but again, all this stuff that we're talking about, we're kind of doing Monday morning quarterbacking. I'm sure they do a lot of that. They have their after action reports and what went wrong, what went right. But man, I just think that they all have to be scratching their heads now and saying, we've been doing a lot of things wrong. And, maybe we need to sort of rewrite the entire playbook because we're dealing now with a threat level that has never before been seen, in our lifetimes in terms of, the political life. This is a president that's, been in power now for the second time around. And, they've tried to kill him 3 times in a year and a half. Okay.
Yeah, even before he was president, the 2 attempts were prior.
Right. Exactly. Before he was president. Yeah, but in a year and a half, basically, he's had 3 attempts on his life. So he's got 2 more years left to go. Are we to expect another, 3-4 attempts between now and the time he leaves office? I mean, the Secret Service needs to be thinking along those lines. Okay, they really need to be on edge at every single event, and they need to have
and incorporate technology as well. The golf course, if they had like a drone with thermals, they could have detected a man in the bushes.
Sure. No, they need to up their game, man. They're still in the in a mindset of like a decade ago, and that's not the mindset we're in right now. And you're right, Marcus. Drones could alleviate a lot of those problems. Apparently at Butler there was a request for them to bring drones, okay, to do some surveillance, and it was shot down for budgetary reasons or something. I remember that came out in the investigation.
There was a drone. I remember hearing that one of the operator didn't know. He didn't have time to prep with the manual. He didn't know how to operate.
Yeah, exactly. So
now the shooter drone was working. The shooter had a drone.
I mean, think about that. That's almost like amateurish, right? It's like you and me.
Disgusting.
It's like you and me. We're putting together an event, and somebody comes up with an idea. Hey, why don't we get a drone and fly it so we can have a better coverage? And then, yeah, Carlos, why don't you go out and go down to the Sears or something or whatever, the Walmart, and buy us a drone.
Then I don't know how to build
a cheap Chinese drone, and then we all show up there the day of the event, and you're there sort of trying to figure out how to put the thing together and reading the instruction manual. That's kind of what you envision the Secret Service agent doing, right? As opposed to having a professional group of individuals who show up, in a huge van, right, with all sorts of drones and monitoring equipment, and they walk out the door, and they got flight suits on, and they got, they set up all their equipment, and they launch a half a dozen drones, and they got, coverage all over the place. And I mean, that's what you would expect from the Secret Service, not, some guy like with an instruction manual trying to figure out how to get it up into the air. Come on, man.
Well,
you would figure like the Service would be on top of it because like drone operators, drone usage in the military has been going on, at least a decade, but for for squad level tactical, it's been going on for a few years. TV, Hollywood has incorporated, but the Secret Service was not on the ball on that. That just it shows like at the management supervisory level, there's a lot of inefficiency and incompetence. And my take is they shouldn't be afraid to demote or fire people.
Yeah, and apart from the other thing, two clarifications. The guy I know, Raul, is shooting a running target is easy on TV, and the guy was not running when he was first shot at. He was crouched in the thicket, and the agent still couldn't hit him. Crouched in the thicket, he missed him there. I get once the person bolts off running, it's a different ballgame. I understand that. The other thing, both the failure at Butler and at the golf course, that was the Biden Secret Service. This the other day was not the Biden Secret Service. I don't see where they've done much in a year and a half.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, maybe you guys could have a take on why is it that Trump, who will fire Pam Bondi because she didn't go after his enemies aggressively enough, and I'm glad that she's gone, and he fired Christy Nunn because she became a distraction. Plus, she's got a freak of a husband, which became an even bigger distraction. Apart from her messing around with Corey Lewandowski, I get that. Why would he not deal with the higher ups at Secret Service? Is he afraid to admit it, even behind the scenes, even if he won't say it on True Social or on TV? For God's sake, why is he not doing something?
It's not the higher ups; it's also the middle management and the lower. It just if the rod is not always at the top, it's kind of permeate throughout the whole agency.
And isn't that on current?
There's a fellow that comes out on Newsmax. I forget his name. But he's a security professional he's on quite often. And this guy was livid after what happened at the Washington Hilton, and he was basically saying, "Listen, man. I mean, I remember when the Secret Service was, guys that were all like, they were all men, and they were all like, 6 foot plus, right? Highly trained, huge biceps, didn't take shit from anybody. I mean, they were like, big jocks, looking for a fight and, ready to, mix it up with anybody." And this guy was also calling out. He's saying, "Listen, man, I mean, I hate to say it, but, there are still some women, in that Secret Service detail of the president that, they're just petite and, they can't shield Trump, who's a much bigger guy." Okay. And, if you remember inside that ballroom, JD Vance got pulled off the stage like right away, but it took a while longer to get the president off the stage. Right. So again, you see this sort of disjointed, and again, it's all Monday morning quarterbacking. Who the hell am I to be criticized?
But it's true, Raul. It's Monday morning, but it happened. I saw women fleeing.
But I think what the three of us here, are kind of a cross section of America saying, I mean, we're all three white guys, I guess, but I mean, or two Cubans and a gringo.
and a mutt.
And a Russian Asian.
The point is that, if we're seeing this, I'm sure the rest of America is asking the same questions that we're asking. It's like, what the hell is going on here, right? And if you're a dog owner and you've had a Malinois, okay, Malinois are very different from every other dog out there, believe me, okay? That's the reason they are the preferred dogs of the military and of law enforcement, the Belgian Malinois. These dogs have a sixth sense. They really do. They're smart as can be. They pick up on stuff. They know when something's going down, and that dog, was trying to, maybe I think he was trying to alert his handler that there was something there that wasn't right. And the minute that handler pushed him away, boom, the guy bolts out the door. Something happened there. I'd be, having a serious conversation with that guy, maybe sending him and the dog back to school or something to.
Not the dog's fault. It's
huh?
It's not him, not the dog. The dog, like you said, was obeying his handler. Yeah,
So,
it was a. By the way, any dog, you talked about how astute they are and how intuitive they are. Even a little pooch ankle biter. Why does the dog know you're afraid of him? Because you give off pheromones. Okay?
yeah, exactly, man. Exactly.
Yeah, any dog, especially a dog that is at that acute level of tactical prowess.
Yeah. No, they're, So
you guys have any parting thoughts as we're going to be back in 2 weeks? Do we think there'll still be a regime? I'm going to say that if there's one left, it's going to be on fumes in Iran. Marcus, what say you?
It's like the fall of Germany analogy. There'll be remnants. There'll be what are they called? The werewolves, the little kids. The RGC. Some of them were diehards. I look at it as Iraq, where you get like was it a 60-90 split between Shiite and Sunni, and a percentage out of the 30 created a lot of havoc in that area. So this is where intelligence and the populace and a lot of allies have to get really heads on to pacify the area. It's also deprogramming, but the conflict will be over, but not the internal strife.
Yeah, Raul, end us off.
I think Marcus is right, man. I mean, this is real life, right? I mean, this is not, you can't put this thing in a box and put a ribbon on it and say the war is over type of stuff, right? It's just not. It's a complicated situation. Huge power struggle going on within the country. The IRGC has been a cancer, on the country and the Ayatollahs for, since the late 1970s, right? When I was in college, right? They're not going to disappear from one day to the other. But I think that, the economic pressure is really mounting very quickly. I mentioned that situation where, they can't just turn the oil off like a faucet. Okay. They're losing hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue. There is apparently, a lot of, there's people, there's food shortages now. People are really starting to feel the effects that they've been without internet ever since the war began, right? So I think something's gonna have to give, and we'll see what happens.
We need to find a way to arm the populace too. Well, it's been a pleasure tonight talking on all these topics. For our viewers, if you like what you saw tonight, like and subscribe. And with that, we will see you in 2 weeks. I bid you good night.
Take care, guys.